Okay, quick tutorial on how to use the Retopology tools inside 3D Studio Max. So here I have a high poly model. You can see by the density of the polygons here that it's super high. It's taken straight out of Modbox or ZBrush. And the first thing that we need to do is have the model selected. And then up on the top here, under your freeform option, so you're sat inside modeling, click on freeform, and then click on poly draw at the bottom here, and you want to add a new object. Okay, so as soon as you click on that, it'll bring you a new box 001 in here. Call that your Retopology. And then up here, you want to change where it's drawing onto. So we want to change it to drawing on surface, and then where it says head 6 for me at the moment, yours probably says none or is blank. Click that, or I think it says pick. Click that, and then click on the object that you want to draw onto. So for us, it's the high poly model. So click that. So now I'm using my Retopology object. You can't see it; it's blank. It's free. You can see that I've got it selected here, and then I want to go to step build, which is the first part of drawing in your own topology. There is an option over here called topology, where you can actually physically draw lines, and then as soon as your lines cross to make a square, it will draw a polygon in there. But I find step build a little easier to use. So click on step build, and then zoom into the first area that you want to draw the polygons onto. So for me, I'm just going to quickly draw around this eye. Now, before I start doing that, the new mesh that I'm going to draw will be sitting on top of the high poly model. And depending on how high or low this offset number is here, depends on how far away the new surface will be from the high poly surface. So for mine, for this model, I've set it to 0.02, or sorry, 0.2. For you, you may want to adjust and adapt this, but I'll show you how you can change that on the fly later. So first thing is I'm going to draw in these first few vertices where I want my initial polygons to appear, like that. Then I'm going to hold down Shift and drag in from one of these edges to create the first polygon, like that. Then holding down Shift still, I'm going to click from this edge here, and I'm going to pull towards this edge here, and it will draw the polygon in between, like that. And I can keep doing that to go all the way around the model. So if it goes wrong like that, it just flips up into that area. Just Control and do, and then just come in from another angle and then come across again, and it will fill it for you. So there's our first set of polygons. Now to move individual vertices around, if you hold down Control, Shift, and Alt at the same time. Sounds a bit convoluted, but it does work quite well, and it's quite intuitive once you get used to it. So now I can move around and reposition these verts, and wherever I move them, they will move based on where that vert is on the head, on the high poly head. So you can see how it's kind of sticking to the surface. So if I kept a gap such as this, the one thing that's really, really nice about the 3D Studio Max version of Retopology tools is we can still use our modeling tools as well. So we can still use the Swift Loop tools in order to draw in extra geometry. So just an example of that is I can jump straight over to modeling, and I can go into my Swift Loop tool here, and then I can draw an extra set of edges, 1 or 2 or 3 of them, however many I want, into this section here, and they draw in. Those new edges, they will attempt to conform to the high poly head, but if they don't, and if they kind of pull too far away or they go too far in, here's where you can change how far the distance is. So go back into your freeform, and then if I change this offset, let's just change this to 0.6, quite far away from the head for my one. And then if I click on this conform button here, what that does is it will give you a brush. It'll pop up in a second, a circular brush. And then when I click, what it's doing is it's pulling those vertices away from the face by 0.6. Okay, if I rotate around, you can see it's pulled it away from the eye socket. If I change that back again now to 0.2, and then reuse the brush, I'm going to push them back again onto the model. So you want to kind of somewhere in between it clipping through, such as here. That might just be because we haven't got enough geometry there to stop it from clipping through, and it being too far away. So that's roughly about right. So 0.2 is great for mine. So from there, you can do a few other things. So this extend tool, if you hover over it, it will tell you all of the little options that it can do by holding down shift or shift click or shift drag or control alt. So if I click on extend, one of the things that is really useful is once you've created your first piece of geometry. So if I grab, for example, this bottom line here, if I hold down shift and drag, it creates a new piece of geometry. And then in order to build another piece here, instead of shift and dragging again, which would create a separate piece, and therefore I'd have to jump back into modeling tools in order to make sure that these were target welded. If I undo that, instead of holding down shift, I don't hold anything on the keyboard. I can just click this vertex over here and drag it out to the right, and it already is welded over on this vertex over here. See, so you can quickly kind of run around, quickly run around the model, pulling out these new verts where you want them, and it creating new faces for you quite quickly. Okay, if we've got a scenario where, let's say, this one is up here, and you want to bridge between the two, that's as simple as holding down Control and Alt, and then clicking from the first edge and dragging over to the second edge, and it will pop the polygon in between the two. And then again, remember, Control, Shift, and Alt allows us to quickly run around and reposition these wherever we want them. So it's a much more user-friendly way of doing retopology, and it allows you to add some of those modeling tools that you're used to using in 3dsMax or any other piece of software that you're used to, in order to add in things like swift loops and things like that. Obviously, this is quite a low poly version of the model underneath. Remember that because you're in Max, you can use all of the same modifier options that you're used to using. So we can come down in the modifier list, and we can choose, for example, Turbo Smooth to smooth out the area. We can also jump into the list and come down and find symmetry, and it will draw the symmetry onto the character for us as well. Okay, so once you're finished with it, you will end up with a separate model that has been drawn directly on the top of the high poly, but it will be a much lower polyed model, obviously. And then it's a case of using the projection tutorial, which is elsewhere on my YouTube, for you to project the high poly detail onto the low poly head. Okay.